grotesque death of Henry VIII, the untold story. Imagine a man whose very presence once commanded fear and admiration across Europe, reduced in the end to a twisted shadow of himself. A body ravaged by unbearable pain, his skin swollen and disfigured, emitting a stench so foul it caused even his closest courtiers to faint. After his death, corrosive fluids leaked from his coffin, greedily lapped up by stray dogs roaming the palace grounds. This chilling, grotesque finale was the fate of one of history's most notorious monarchs, Henry VIII of England. Born Henry Tudor on June 28, 1491, he ascended the throne at the tender age of 17, bursting onto the European stage as a dazzling figure of youth and vigor. Tall, athletic, and crowned with striking golden red hair, Henry was the very embodiment of royal majesty. Venetian ambassadors described him as possessing an almost angelic beauty, claiming no other Christian prince could rival his charm or presence. Yet, behind this perfect facade lay a tragic story that few dare to tell in full. How did such a vigorous, charismatic king end his days as a grotesque figure of decay and despair? The turning point came in January 1536. Henry, now 44 years old, participated in a jousting tournament held in Greenwich. Known for his love of sport and competition, he was eager to demonstrate his skill and strength. But fate had other plans. During one fierce charge, his horse collapsed beneath him, sending the king crashing violently to the ground. He was unconscious for 2 long hours. Though Henry survived the accident, the damage was devastating. His right leg was severely injured, and the wound never healed properly. What began as a bruise soon turned into a festering ulcer that refused to close. The injury was not just painful, it became a source of terrible humiliation. The open sore constantly oozed foul-smelling pus, filling the air with a nauseating stench that announced the king's presence long before he entered any room. For a man so vain and proud, this was a cruel blow. Courtiers were forced to endure the overpowering odor without showing any sign of disgust, a difficult task, considering many fainted or fled in secret. But to express revulsion was to risk the king's wrath, which could be swift and unforgiving. Even more alarming than the physical suffering was the profound change in Henry's behavior after the injury. Historians suggest the brain trauma from the fall may have triggered or worsened a range of psychological issues: paranoia, violent outbursts, and extreme mood swings. It was during this period that Henry's darker impulses came to the fore. Coincidentally, only months after the accident, Henry ordered the arrest and eventual execution of his second wife, Anne Boleyn, on charges of adultery, incest, and treason, accusations widely believed to be fabricated. The once confident and magnetic king had transformed into a man driven by suspicion and cruelty. As his health continued to deteriorate over the following years, Henry's body grew grotesquely swollen. Medical records and eyewitness accounts describe him as nearly immobile, plagued by obesity and chronic infections. His leg ulcers festered, sometimes burning with unbearable pain. Yet, despite his condition, he maintained a fierce grip on power, ruling England with an iron fist until his death on January 28, 1547. The aftermath of his death was as horrifying as his final years. When his tomb was opened centuries later, traces of the caustic fluids that had leaked from his body were still evident. Legend says stray dogs at the palace eagerly lapped up these remains, a haunting symbol of the fall from grandeur. Henry VIII's story is a stark reminder that beneath the trappings of power and glory, even the mightiest can suffer deeply, physically, mentally, and emotionally. His life was marked by grandeur and scandal, triumph and tragedy, but his death reveals a raw and brutal truth often hidden by history's polished veneer. Today, we peel back the layers of myth and legend to reveal the disturbing reality of a king who captivated a nation and changed the course of English history, yet died in agony and disgrace, alone with his pain. The tormented life of Henry VIII. Henry VIII's reign is remembered as much for its grandeur as for its cruelty. Behind the golden facade lay a man consumed by desire, fear, and an insatiable hunger for control. His 6 marriages, marked by passion, betrayal, and bloodshed, reveal the restless soul of a king desperate to secure his legacy, no matter the cost. The tragic fall at Greenwich was not just a physical wound, but a fracture in Henry's very psyche. His mind, once sharp and charismatic, grew clouded with suspicion. He saw enemies everywhere, real and imagined. Trusted advisors vanished overnight, accused of treason or heresy, many meeting brutal ends. The court became a theater of paranoia, where whispers carried the weight of death sentences. Anne Boleyn, once the radiant queen who had captured Henry's heart, became the first victim of this dark transformation. Their passionate love story, full of promise and power, crumbled into a nightmare. Accused of adultery and conspiracy, Anne was arrested and condemned on flimsy evidence. Her execution in 1536 was not just the fall of a queen, but a grim symbol of Henry's ruthless determination. Yet Anne's death did not bring peace to the troubled king. His quest for a male heir drove him to marry 4 more times, each union stained with turmoil and tragedy. Jane Seymour, his 3rd wife, gave birth to the much-desired son, Edward, but died soon after, leaving Henry grief-stricken, yet ever more obsessed with securing the Tudor dynasty. The king's relationships with his wives were deeply entwined with his political ambitions and his own inner demons. His violent outbursts, fueled by pain and paranoia, shattered families and altered the course of English history. The infamous break with the Roman Catholic Church, triggered by the Pope's refusal to annul his first marriage, led to the English Reformation, a seismic shift that reshaped religion, politics, and society. But beneath the political upheaval and grand historical narratives lies the personal agony of a man trapped by his own flesh. As Henry's body swelled grotesquely, burdened by obesity and the relentless ulcers that ate away at his leg, so too did his isolation grow. Friends and allies abandoned him, fearful of his unpredictable rage. His health deteriorated steadily. And yet he clung to the throne with desperate tenacity. Imagine the king, once so vibrant and commanding, confined to his chambers, plagued by pain so severe that even sleep was elusive. The very body that had ridden into battle and held a nation in awe was now a prison, swollen beyond recognition, oozing infection, emitting a stench so foul it sickened all who approached. But what made Henry's story truly tragic was not only his physical decline, but the loneliness that engulfed him. Despite the power and wealth that surrounded him, he faced death alone, haunted by the ghosts of his past. The wives he had lost, the friends betrayed, the kingdom forever changed by his hand. In his final days, Henry reportedly expressed regret and fear, aware that his actions had left a scar on England's soul. Yet, the king who once danced in the sunlight and jousted with vigor was now a man diminished, a cautionary tale of the dangers of pride and unchecked power. The grotesque end of Henry VIII forces us to confront the human cost being history's great figures. It reminds us that beneath the crowns and thrones lie vulnerable beings, shaped by pain, ambition, and the relentless passage of time. The final curtain, lessons from the tragic end of Henry VIII. As the final chapter of Henry VIII's life unfolded, the grandeur of kingship faded into a grim reality few would want to face. His towering legacy, built on ambition, passion, and ruthless determination, was shadowed by suffering and regret. The once vibrant king, adored and feared across Europe, lay crippled by his own body, a prisoner to the wounds that would never heal and the pain that would never cease. His swollen limbs and the vile stench of his festering sores spoke not only of physical decay, but of the cost of power unrestrained by mercy or humility. Yet Henry's story is more than a tale of decline and despair. It is a stark reminder of the human frailty that underlies even the most formidable rulers. It teaches us that power and glory can come at a devastating price, when pride blinds judgment and cruelty replaces compassion. The ripples of Henry's reign still echo through history. The birth of the Church of England, the seismic religious upheaval of the Reformation, and a kingdom forever changed by his decisions. But behind these grand historical shifts lay a man tormented by fear, desire, and loneliness. His 6 marriages, his political machinations, and his violent temper reveal a man searching desperately for control in a world that was slipping away. The grotesque decay of his final years contrasts sharply with the youthful prince once praised for his beauty and vigor, a tragic transformation underscored by pain, loss, and isolation. For us today, Henry VIII's life is a cautionary tale, one that warns against the corrosive effects of unchecked ambition and the price of ruling without empathy. It invites us to look beyond the myths of kings and queens and see the human beings beneath, flawed, vulnerable, and profoundly shaped by their circumstances. In the end, Henry VIII's death was not just the fall of a king, but the fading of a man who had once held the fate of a nation in his hands. His story lingers as a powerful lesson that the pursuit of power, if left unchecked, can lead to destruction, not just of others, but of oneself. As we remember Henry VIII, let us not only recall his triumphs and scandals, but also the profound tragedy of a man undone by his own body and mind. A king who, despite all his might, could not escape the frailty of the human condition.